Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something pretty intense, a really passionate corner of online gaming.
Yeah, definitely passionate, maybe even furious sometimes.
Right, we're talking about this concept that gets people really worked up, borrowed power.
You hear it mentioned with like an actual groan sometimes.
Exactly. So our mission today, our deep dive, is to try and cut through some of that, raw emotion and figure out why. Why does this specific game design thing trigger such strong reactions?
It's a great window into how players think, isn't it? We've seen loads of chat about this, but for this deep dive, yeah, we're zoning in on one particular forum discussion.
Online forum, yeah.
Yeah, and it just captures the essence of this complaint perfectly. It's lively, definitely no holds barred, really lays out the main issues.
And I think the feelings here, they go way beyond just one game, right? It's kind of universal for anyone who sinks their, precious time into any kind of progression system.
Totally. Digital or anywhere else, really.
Yeah. It's not just about game mechanics for some people. It feels like a real affront, like you said, an insult to their time and effort.
Definitely.
So the core of this deep dive, it comes from a Reddit post. The title alone kind of says it all. Is anyone else sick of borrowed power?
Huh. Yeah. All caps, multiple question marks. You get the vibe immediately.
Found on wowcirclejerk. And yeah, the original poster, they are clearly not messing around. They kick things off saying they just watched a video about the upcoming patch, and to absolutely no one's surprise, there's more borrowed power with the new cloak.
And what's really striking is just how blunt it is. Right away, borrowed power is inherently bad.
No easing into it?
Nope, no ambiguity, no soft intro. It's just presented like it's obvious. A self-evident truth for this player. A basic flaw in the game design that everyone just knows is bad.
Okay, so how do they actually define borrowed power for us? What's the immediate problem they're pointing to?
Well, they describe it pretty clearly, actually. It's these items that start out strong and you spend 10 minutes a week upgrading them.
10 minutes a week.
And the key thing there, I think, is the focus on the time and the effort for something that feels, well, temporary.
Right.
That phrase, it's an insult to my time, that's powerful. It's not just about those specific 10 minutes,
Yeah.
It digs into this deeper feeling about value, respect for how you engage with the game.
Like your investment isn't being taken seriously.
Exactly. When a system makes you do repetitive stuff consistently for something that feels like it's just going to disappear. Yeah, it triggers that sense of wasted effort. This whole borrowed idea implies you don't really own the power.
It's on loan.
It's on the, and it can be, taken as back or just made irrelevant when the next patch drops.
Yeah, it's like imagine getting a super fast, amazing car for just 1 week.
Okay.
But then next week, they swap it out for a slightly different one, and you have to earn all the cool upgrades all over again, the ones you just spent that week grinding for.
Yeah. That would be frustrating.
And the poster specifically links this feeling to past expansions, mentioning Shadowlands and BFA. So it's not like this is a new complaint for them.
No, it's a recurring thing, a pattern they see.
Like an old wound, yeah, a cycle they feel stuck in, where the effort they put in just keeps getting, devalued.
And that really brings up a big question, doesn't it? About how these design choices affect a player's sense of agency. Their feeling of progression.
Yeah, absolutely.
If players feel like the work they put in long-term isn't actually building towards something permanent, something solid, if their power keeps getting reset or watered down, it just chips away at that sense of accomplishment, that feeling of ownership in the game world.
Makes sense.
This whole insult to my time thing, it often comes from that perceived lack of permanence, I think, despite putting in consistent effort. It taps into that, basic human thing where we don't like losing things we've invested in.
Especially time, which is finite.
Exactly. Time and emotion. It's like your sunk costs in getting powerful aren't giving you lasting returns, just temporary boosts.
Okay, so given this really strong rejection of borrowed power, what's the alternative they suggest? Because they don't just complain, right? They offer a pretty specific, maybe even a bold solution.
Oh yeah, it's definitely bold. They basically argue for, instant gratification, saying Blizzard should just give me 25 dinars to buy my bias on the first day of the new batch.
Wow, okay. Just hand it over.
Right. Which is such a fascinating contrast to the forced grinds they hate so much. This idea of bias best in slot gear. That's like the holy grail for a lot of players each patch.
The ultimate gear.
Yeah, the ultimate power for that specific time. And players usually spend a lot of time getting it. This player basically wants to skip that whole part.
And they frame it, interestingly, as the key to their personal goals. They actually say, Blizzard's insistence on borrowed power and forced grinds has made gearing impossible for me, and it's the only thing stopping me from being a mythic raider.
That's a strong statement.
It really is. It's almost like they're pointing the finger saying, your systems, your design choices are holding me back. It's not just about fun anymore. It's about hitting a very specific, high-level target in the game, becoming a mythic raider.
And that perspective really highlights this intense desire for a clear path,
Right.
an unhindered path to the top tier of play.
Right. No obstacle.
For someone aiming for Mythic Raider, every single piece of gear, every little stat point, it all matters. It adds up to their competitive edge, their ability to actually succeed in the toughest content.
Sure.
So when a system like borrowed power comes along and feels like, I don't know, an artificial barrier or just a pointless, repetitive chore,
Yeah.
it's seen as directly blocking their ambitions.
Right.
This player wants to focus on the challenge of the raid, the actual gameplay, not what they see as, tedious gearing stuff.
You want the tools right away.
Basically, yeah. Hand them the tools to perform at their best, rather than making them constantly earn and re-earn temporary power boosts. It becomes about efficiency, about getting to peak performance with the least amount of friction possible.
Okay, so we've got this very clear, very strong complaint. Borrowed power is bad, insults my time, just give me my best gear right now.
Pretty much sums it up, yeah.
But then, you know how online forums are.
Always a twist.
Always a twist. A fascinating one appears in the comments. Another player, username WildGoldbat, jumps in and says, basically, no, I think Blizzard should let me borrow even more power.
Right. Which seems, on the surface, like a complete U-turn from the original complaint.
Totally.
And Wild Goldback gives this really unique analogy to explain it. They say, think of the Spirit Bomb from GBZ.
Okay, Dragon Ball Z reference.
Yeah. Why can't I ask other players to lend me their energy? It's actually a brilliant way to think about a different kind of borrowed power, isn't it?
It really is. Not about solo grinding, but like collective power.
Exactly. Collective, maybe temporary, but potentially massive power.
And the reason they want this is also super clear, but totally different from the first poster. Wild Goldbat wants this super borrowed power, to live out my dream of being #1 on Warcraft logs.
The leaderboards.
After years of getting kicked because I do not main mage, fuck you, Ghostcrawler.
Wow. Okay. Very specific, very competitive goal there.
Very specific, yeah. And notice they're not actually complaining about the idea of borrowed power itself.
No, they want more of it.
They want more, but a different kind. They're unhappy with the form it currently takes and how that form, maybe, stops them from hitting the top of the competitive ladder.
So it's not the borrowing they hate, it's the current system of borrowing.
That seems to be the core of it, yeah. It's fascinating because it shows that borrowed power isn't just one monolithic bad thing for everyone. The way it works matters hugely.
Right.
The first poster hates the personal, repetitive grind. Feels like a time sink. Blocks their path to rating. Wild Goldbat, though, they seem to embrace the idea of temporary power.
But they want it to be this, dramatic, collaborative thing that helps them dominate the leaderboards.
Yeah.
It really highlights the different motivations players bring to the game.
One wants to avoid a grind to achieve their personal rating goals. The other wants to use external, maybe social power to crush the competition.
Precisely. Two very different angles on how power should work.
And you can really feel Wild Goldbat's frustration, too, can't you? Years of getting kicked because I do not main mage.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a different kind of powerlessness they're expressing. Feeling limited by their class, by the meta, and they see more or maybe different borrowed power as the answer to their specific problem.
Yeah, it's almost like a plea, isn't it? A plea to be relevant in that competitive scene they feel shut out of.
Yeah.
And it really pushes us to ask, is the actual problem the borrowing of power itself? Or is it the nuts and bolts the system used to acquire it, experience it, and eventually, lose it?
That seems key.
For the original poster, it's that feeling of wasted time on a system that just resets. For Wild Goldbat, it's about getting access to that peak performance, getting that competitive recognition, even if the power itself is temporary, as long as it's impactful and lets them achieve their goal.
So the temporariness isn't the core issue for everyone.
Maybe not. It might be more about the utility of that power and the friction involved in getting it.
Yeah.
It also sort of points to how Developers might design a system with one goal in mind, maybe player retention or balance.
Sure.
But players filter through their own goals, their own drive for achievement, for efficiency.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together now. We've gone from this really clear, quite angry protest against borrowed power feels like an insult, a forced grind, to this kind of surprising fantasy of wanting even more borrowed power, but in a collaborative, almost epic way to dominate leaderboards.
Yeah, quite the journey.
Both players are obviously deeply invested. Both are frustrated with how the current power systems affect what they want to achieve in the game. It really seems to boil down to that bigger theme, right? Player frustration, wanting control over their experience.
Absolutely. Control over their time investment or control over their competitive rank.
Yeah.
And what this deep dive really shows us, I think, is this fascinating paradox. Borrowed power isn't just inherently good or bad on its own.
Its impact depends.
It's entirely shaped by what the player wants out of it. Are they looking for permanent personal growth? Or are they after that temporary competitive edge?
Right.
These discussions, even on a, let's be honest, pretty hyperbolic forum like a wowcirclejerk,
Yeah.
they actually shine a light on some deep player psychology, that constant negotiation between wanting things to be convenient versus wanting a challenge, between personal achievement and, your social standing in the game.
That makes sense.
Players want to feel powerful. They want to progress. And fundamentally, they want their effort to feel respected. So when game systems, like this idea of borrowed power, mess with those expectations, that's when you get the intense friction. That's when you get that feeling, as our source put it so well, of it being an insult to my time.
It's like the difference between feeling you're actually building something lasting versus just running on a hamster wheel.
Exactly. A hamster wheel that occasionally gets a new, slightly shinier but still temporary wheel attached.
And that feeling that your time is being disrespected, that's such a potent driver for player backlash, isn't it?
Hugely potent.
Whether it's the annoyance of grinding upgrades for a cloak that'll be obsolete soon, or feeling like you're locked out of top-tier play because your class isn't meta and you can't borrow enough power somehow, the core desire underneath seems to be for a system that feels fair, rewarding, respectful of the hours you choose to put in.
It's a demand for agency, really, for their investment to mean something.
Yeah.
So maybe the question we're left with, the one to really chew on, is the one from our source material. When does a system designed to give you power cross that line? When does it become an insult to your time? And we invite you, the listener, to think about that in your own experiences, maybe in games, maybe at work, maybe anywhere you see progression systems. When does the effort feel like a worthwhile investment? And when does it just start to feel like a tedious grind where you're not really valued?
That's a great question to ponder. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the very, very passionate world of borrowed power.
Thanks for having me. It was fascinating.
We'll catch you next time for another journey into what makes us tick.